So we're now recording this. This monthly webinar is going to be added to the VA intern YouTube page that Dominic Ramirez at a DME kind of manages. He put the link within the chat section of GoToMeeting. So maybe you could subscribe. You'll get alerts every time a new video is posted there. But a great place to go back and, as we look at the platform, a lot of the videos that we've done in the past is, we've done this for a number of months now, whether it's on the published side of the platform, various aspects and features, the engage, the analyze, all those videos that we've talked about in the past on how to do stuff is posted there. So again, we'll post this month's video as well. So let's introduce today's speakers. I'll let Dominic, I don't know if he needs an introduction, but we'll let Dom say hello.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
So my name is Dominic Ramirez. I work on the digital media engagement team out of the Office of Public and Intergovernmental Affairs. My team uses Salesforce to manage some of the VA's main social media channels. And yeah, that's me. I would like to ask anybody who has not already done so to put your phone on mute unless you're going to ask a question or something. And that's me.
Okay. Thanks, Dom, and thanks for all the support to all the users that you're using to help tie social accounts or offer some expertise to. So great resource for VA. Thanks, Dom. Tara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Kraus. I'm a success specialist with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, who works primarily with Social Studio, Social Studio Automate, Command Center, and social customer service. So I assist clients with onboarding and best practices and calls and webinars just like these.
I know every month we make fun of their photos, but it looks like Dominic and I are giants, and you're like a smaller person, like a regular sized person, and we're giants, right? So, all good. Like Dominic's head's like 10 times the size of yours. So, hey guys, Brett Shippey, public sector account executive, supporting our Marketing Cloud and Social Studio is one of the channels, one of the products inside Marketing Cloud. So happy to support these webinars. Dom, Tara and I got together yesterday. We put an agenda together for today's webinar that we're going to be running through. But I encourage everybody, if you don't have my email address, and I'll put that in the chat, you could always email Dom as well. Give us your ideas. What are you running into during the month, some of the challenges? What are the successes that you're having, right? It's not just Dom, Tara, and I that need to be presenting. This is, shared successes that we want to put out, because whether you're in a program office, you're in a medical center, you're in headquarters, there could be a lot of things that you're doing well that maybe other people could attach onto. So that's the value here and what we're trying to share and disseminate that good information. So you have full access to the platform, whether it's to publish, engage, and analyze. And today, we're going to be talking about a new feature that we haven't talked about before, and that's the automate aspects of Social Studio. So the great thing is it can help you make your life easier. It's the work engine behind Social Studio to do a lot of the automation. So we think about great use cases like the ability to categorize posts, right? To find influencers, reduce the noise and some of the spam that's out there coming into your social accounts. Threshold alerts, right? If you're getting a lot of posts about the same thing, it can actually kick off an alert to you through email or push notification. And then it's also the work engine. If social shouldn't sit in a silo and in a corner, right? If something is good that's happening in social, it could also be shared with other colleagues that are on the Salesforce platform, maybe just not in Social Studio. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tara Cross. Tara is going to take us through a high-level what the social hub is, and then she's going to show you how to create some of these use cases that I just talked about. So we turn it over to Tara. While I'm doing that, and Tara, one quick thing is we don't mind questions, but there's also going to be time at the end for questions as well. So either is fine.
Absolutely, and feel free to interrupt me as we do go through, or if you prefer, because we do have a lot of people on the call, you can just type questions in the chat window and I'll check them periodically. All right, so just let me know when everyone can see my screen.
We can see it, Tara.
Perfect. So Social Studio Automate is, formerly Social Hub, is a rules engine that we use in conjunction with Social Studio to set up rules. And these rules usually consist of a certain condition, a criteria that they would need to meet in order to happen, and then an action. So we'll dig into this, but I just wanted to give you at a high level what Automate is and go through some of these use cases in this deck before we jump into the platform, if that works for everyone. So just to put it in the context of Social Studio and kind of all of the tools that we use alongside of Social Studio, in Social Studio, you have two data sources: your social account data, so that's the content that is, of course, incoming and outgoing on your social account, and then we have social listening data, which we call topic profiles. Either of those data sources can be pumped into Automate, and then Automate can apply some rules on those. And then those rules can apply to posts that end up showing in Social Studio again. So a lot of customers will set up Automate rules for cleaning and routing. So when they pop up, the posts pop up in your Engage column in Social Studio, they already have some labels on them, things like that. The other option is to send them to Service Cloud directly. So we do have a lot of clients who are using the integration with Service Cloud, and using Automate, they'll automatically push posts over there based on certain criteria. Maybe the language that's in the post, could be a number of different conditions. So this is what Automate does. It really is the kind of liaison between the data and the output. And before we jump into the platform, I just want to share a couple of the kind of common use cases that we see customers use for Automate. So these are certainly not all of the use cases, but like I said, the most common ones. So deleting profanity is a really common one. So if you do have words that pop up in posts that are profanity, you can create what we call a content library in Automate, where if one of those words appear, we would then end up deleting that post. So that's a really common one if you don't want profanity on your own accounts. Very normal. We can also translate posts.
Is doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe.
Sorry, not to didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah.
No, please do.
We set that rule in place, and we reduce. We don't actually delete it. We just hide those comments if they violate our comments policy. But so it's still there. It's just not, visible to everybody. But it has reduced the amount of time we spend moderating by like orders of magnitude. It is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You don't need to do the actions that are even listed here. You can, like you said, hide instead. There's lots of options, which will I'll show you kind of the array of them. And even to this day, I've been working with Automate now for I think 5 or 6 years, and there's still functionalities in there that I haven't even seen be used or I'm not aware of. So it's a very complex tool, but there's so many amazing opportunities with it. So translating posts, if you are a customer that's using Bing, that's available to you as well. But the most common, I guess, rule that we would see aside from just the general cleanup would be categorizing. So this is adding labels on your posts before they even end up in your Engage columns in Social Studio. So if it relates to certain topics, you can add a label automatically by creating one of those content libraries in Automate. And I'll walk you through that shortly. And reducing noise in general. So if the posts are retweet, you likely wouldn't end up engaging with it. So if that's the case, why bother seeing it in your Engage column? So what it's doing is it would automatically add labels on it, and your column would be filtered. So you wouldn't need to see those posts. They wouldn't pop up in your column. We're not deleting them, we're not removing them, we're just organizing them, kind of like putting them in a drawer, so if we need them for later, we can pull them out for reporting and other purposes, but we don't need them in our engaged column. So there's some use cases around that as well. All right, I'll just stop there for a second in case anyone does have any questions. I don't see any in the chat window though. All right, and a couple other use cases here. Influencers is a great one. So depending on what your definition would be of an influencer, for Twitter, we can set up an author label and apply that to people automatically based on the number of followers they have, or whether or not they're verified, or if there's certain words in their bio. So this is a really cool use case if you do want that purple author label to appear automatically once that post is into Engage. So then you may dig a little deeper on that person before you respond, and you may change the way that you do respond to that individual.
Hey, Tara. So are you able with the author bio in that specific use case to find a veteran specifically? Somebody that put it in that they're a veteran.
Exactly. That's exactly the use case that we would use it. So if they had that term or I'm a veteran or something like that, even just the word veteran, you could automatically apply that author label. So you would know right away once they pop up, their post pops up in Engage.
Yeah, I would be aware of the possibility for like a false positive there, because, you know, let's say if you use the term vet and somebody's actually, you know, veterinarian.
Right.
But, you know, and some people use the term veteran to, like, I'm a veteran reporter, you know, like somebody who's been doing it for a long time. So, but yeah, it still be useful. It would narrow down the list, you know, a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. You can be pretty complex too with the logic in there, similar to the way you can with a topic profile. So, you know, depending on the language, and you can definitely be pretty specific. So we can definitely help out with that. And some of these other ones in here more relate to kind of a customer service side. So if you want to enforce SLA in Social Studio and making sure just that your response times are keeping up with that, you can assign posts to managers or send alerts by email if there's certain posts that come in and haven't been kind of dealt with in a certain time period. So that's pretty common for customers who are sending posts, especially to Service Cloud. And on that note, our Sales or Service Cloud use case, you can send posts over there through Automate automatically if you'd like. Now, using macros in Social Studio is another way you can do that manually, but some customers prefer to send certain posts if they meet a certain criteria right away into Service Cloud, so they don't even show up in Social Studio. They're still there. They're not deleted. They just are organized. Like I said, they're pushed away, so you don't need to deal with them there.
Well, I have a question regarding alerting by email. I think I mentioned this yesterday. Is that like a use case that I could potentially, if I have something that might be a suicide threat, I could send it to the Veteran Crisis Line by email?
Yes, absolutely.
Like in an automated fashion?
Exactly. So if it meets a certain criteria, so if it's a content library, you want to set up certain keywords to trigger it, you can do that, and then you can add any email address in there, and it would send it off to them. Yeah, for sure. And we have, so those email alerts are very helpful. There are also the threshold alerts. So if there is a threshold you'd like to put in place, if there's a certain topic that all of a sudden there is an influx of posts coming in about it, you'd like to be alerted. So it can be based on reaching a certain threshold, just number of posts in a certain time period, or based on a percentage change. And you can get really specific with how frequently you want to be alerted if it reaches that threshold, the time period that it should take into consideration. It's similar to the alerts that you can set up in the Engage column in Social Studio, but much more sophisticated, because it can alert you as quickly as every 5 minutes rather than just once every 24 hours. So we'll walk through those. So I just wanted to show you a couple of those main use cases. We actually have a few more set up in our Automate environment. So Automate is a tool that we usually recommend only having a couple of people actually adding the rules in here. So you will notice if you do log in with your Social Studio credentials, and it is a different URL here, it's rules.radian6.com, that there is a viewing as option at the top. And the reason for this is that we typically recommend to have an admin user only setting up rules. So in our instance, I can actually go down and see the rules that our admin user has set up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I don't create rules out of my own user unless it's the alerts. The alerts won't affect anything, but anything outside of the alerts, I would 100% recommend speaking with Dom or whoever else is in here creating rules, just to make sure that you don't have conflicting rules.
Yeah, I believe, Tara, you said that I should consider setting up an admin account and then letting people that want to experiment with it create rules under that admin account rather than under their own Social Studio account.
Exactly.
Conflicts.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because sometimes you will have rules in place that need to fall into a certain sequence. So you want to make sure that they're not conflicting and things are running smoothly. Automate's definitely a tool where things can go haywire really easily. So that's why we definitely recommend that anyone who's in here is trained on the tool, and also it is as few users as possible, so you're not creating those conflicting rules. You will notice on the top right that there is a number of actions that's allotted to your account. So that's not something to be too concerned about. If you ever get close to that number, you can just let us know. We can usually just get more assigned to you as part of your license. And if you would ever need to go to the help and training portal about Automate, I definitely recommend clicking on the little help button there, and it will give you a really good detailed read about all the use cases in Automate as well. So I recommend checking that out. So Automate, we have these tabs at the top, and the first step is to pull in the data. So the data could relate to your social accounts or your topic profiles, just depending on what you're looking to do. A lot of customers will set up the cleanup rules on their own accounts to make sure that those posts that they would be monitoring in their engaged column would be only posts that they really need to deal with. So Automate can go through and do some cleanup on those posts. And I'll show you what that means in engaged because it's a little bit tricky to describe. Let me just create a new column here.
Darren posted a question.
Oh, check that out here. Facebook has tools which take precedence. Sorry, Darren, what was that? What were you referring to? Make Darren go off mute. Do you happen to know, Dom, what?
He just posted that it looks like he's already got rules or tools set up in Facebook to hide profanity.
Gotcha.
I imagine that would just block that content from showing up on your page, but I have not played with the Facebook rules either. I will also note that, I mean, sometimes profane words can be written, in such a way as to evade your your Facebook rules, but
right.
You can always add, like if somebody's writing a misspelling of a bad word in order to foil your attempts to block their profane content, you can just add that to your content library so it doesn't show up in the future.
Right. And to answer your question to Darren, that absolutely Facebook would take precedence. This would be the extra layer on top of that, is my assumption.
And I would ask though, my assumption was that Facebook would block that content from ever even making it onto the comment section, whereas at least in my usage of Social Studio and the way that I was using it, I'm only hiding that content. So it still exists, and the person who made that comment can still post it and see it, but the rest of my followers don't have to be subjected to it, basically.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And so for anyone who hasn't kind of gone into the engage section and played around with this, I will just give a quick kind of high-level intro to it. So Engage is typically used to pull in social account data so you can respond to people, engage with comments. So whether it's from a customer service perspective or just a community management perspective, you can pull in that content. You can also bring in topic profile, that social listening data for general monitoring, or if it's on Twitter, you can still technically respond even if they're not mentioning you directly. So we do have some clients that will use a Twitter topic profile for responding and engaging as well. So I'm just going to pull in my social accounts here. I'm going to pull them in for all of my social accounts that I have in this particular workspace. And because I have Automate in place here, we do have some rules taking effect. So a lot of the posts will automatically be closed when they pop in here, which is nice. So we don't have to see posts that are retweets. We won't see posts written by our own accounts. Those are automatically being tagged with a closed status. So then in our Engage column, we can filter by the new content one only. So what it's doing is it's going through all of the content that's coming to and from our accounts, looking through it, and applying labels accordingly. So if it's a retweet, it's going to add a closed status. If it's a post by our accounts, from the Gallagher Travel accounts, which is my demo environment, fake company, then it will apply a closed status. So then what's left over are posts that are new content only. So we have a rule that is in place. So any content that is left over, we can add the new content on it. So then we're able to actually filter our column by new content only. So that way we will only see the content that actually needs to be dealt with. And that's really confusing to describe. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like in Automate. So I'm going to call this my priority column. So this is everything incoming to my account that I haven't dealt with. So in Automate, we have a rule set up, or a priority group of rules actually, talking about the sequence and how posts, or rules rather, need to be in a certain sequence to work. We have different priority groups with different rule sets. So there's the influencer use case I talked about. Here's a categorization one we talked about. And then here's this cleaning and routing one. So we have a lot of rules here. It can be a little overwhelming, but we can always have additional calls too to talk about setting up specific rules. But in this case, what it's doing is it's looking through the content, finding our own posts. So our data sources will be our branded posts. And then it's going to apply an author label for Gallagher. So we know that those posts are, or rather, if it has an author label of Gallagher, so it's taking into consideration if it already has that author label of our own post on it, which we would have set up beforehand. So looking in Social Studio, if you look at post, instead of partner for the purple one, it will actually say Gallagher if it's from our account. So it's looking for that author label, and if it has that, then it's adding that resolve no further action required status on it automatically. So we will not get that post in our engaged column because we are filtering by new content only. So that's what's nice about that. So it's cleaning up those ones. It's also cleaning up retweets. So there's a condition in Automate where if the status is a retweet, let's see, retweet status is a retweet, then we can add that closed status on it. And if we'd like to add an additional layer of labels on it too, just for reporting purposes, you can do that as well with a post label. I'm going to stop there because I know that's kind of a lot.
Well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So is it a requirement, or like, does it work better? And is this what you were talking about by having things in order, like an order of operations, do this one first, then look at it with these rules and do this action, then look at it and do this action?
Yes, it definitely is. And that's what these priority groups are for. So you see how we have them set up in priority. So it will take kind of that order of operations. And the reason for that is because at the very end, it will, for instance, in this case, anything that's left over in that group, so it's gone through and done all of these things, so anything that's left over is going to add that new content status on it to everything. So that's why it's really
important. That makes more sense. I was wondering, okay, because our previous discussion of like when somebody when I set up a rule and somebody else sets up another rule, and you were telling me like the priorities could conflict with one another. I didn't understand how that could be,
Right.
but now it makes sense that you're like setting up an order of operations, and these are all the steps, conditions, triggers, tasks to be accomplished, and then move on to the next step. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have someone else who's setting up the rule and or maybe if that new content one gets switched up here, then it's going to end up putting new content on everything, and then it's going to take these or do these other actions, and it's just not going to be what you'd like it to be. So I'm glad that that makes sense. It's kind of weird to explain.
As an admin, I might want to assign other people's stuff to like different priority levels, so that it doesn't like they don't just get to add things willy-nilly into the list.
Yeah, exactly. No, that definitely makes sense. The other thing to note too with Automate is, so these actions took place before these posts came into our columns, but you can also set up rules based on your actions in Social Studio. So if I created a macro, for instance, here to take a certain action, then I can actually set up a rule based on that. We call that the recent data source rather than the real time. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But the macros in here, we highly recommend using regardless if you're creating kind of a rule, an automation or not, because it will apply the appropriate labels on here. So closing would be the most common use case. If you're done with a post, you've responded, or you decided not to respond, you're done with it. You can apply a macro that would add that close status on it. So for instance, this one here, just say, absolutely. So I responded, and then I'm just going to close it with a macro. So I'm going to do, and you wouldn't have this long list here, but we're going to just say customer service, maybe. And we'll just call it complaining, sure. So the complaining one actually adds recommended follow-up, so that's not the best use case. Customer service closed, here we go. So we'll add this one, and then so it grays our post out, and because our column is filtered by new content, it will actually filter this one out. So it's organizing, it's not deleting it, but it's adding that appropriate label on it. So later on, I can check how many posts did my team close in a month? What categories did they fall under? Because when we use that customer service close macro, it also added the customer service label. So you can have someone manually in here applying macros, or you can use Automate to automatically do that for you based on certain criteria, or both. A lot of clients will actually set up both. Any questions?
I don't think so right now.
Adrienne, did you have a question?
Somebody needs to go on mute, please.
There we go.
I think they did.
All right, so back to Automate. I just like to show Social Studio because it ties it all together. So Automate starts with your data sources, so pulling in that data. And the most common data source to start off with would be pulling in all of your accounts into one data source like we've done here. So that way you can apply the same automations to all of your accounts. So anytime you add maybe a new account in Social Studio, it's always a good practice to go in and add it to your data source and Automate as well, and try to remember to do that.
So you can add more than one social account to a data source?
Yes, and it's definitely recommended to actually do that, because that way you won't have to pick several data sources for your rules. So it's very good practice to do that. Yep.
I did not know that. So what about when we have multiple teams across, because, I manage the DMEs, like the main VA Facebook page, but, VHA has a bunch of VAMCs and stuff, and they also have the VHA Facebook page. Would I pull all of their stuff into a data source, or just let them have their own data source for all VHA stuff, and I just keep my DME data source?
So it depends if you'd like your workflows to be consistent among everyone. Usually clients, they will make it consistent, so that way for at least the cleanup routing rules, you will put all of the accounts in one. So it's completely consistent. You all have kind of that same flow, but then it makes sense to have additional data sources where you would have different rules in those. So you would group the accounts in appropriately into different data sources.
Okay.
So you may have one that's all, and then you may have some that are more grouped into different, lines of business, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think I'd have to talk with with my counterparts before I go wrapping everybody's into one big old data source and applying rules to it. But
exactly.
it's interesting, especially if we were to begin, more of a social media customer service arm, at the VA, and we set up some kind of, requirements or rules regarding, how these things are to be routed and processed and stuff, then we could have a standard that was applied across the VA. But I don't think we really have a unified customer service process like that yet. But it's something to take into consideration, I think, for the future. Yeah,
for sure. And even just that, for one group of accounts to have that, it just allows you to have that reporting, and you can triage appropriately, and it saves so much time. So you wouldn't have to be in there bogged down by a long list of posts. It would just do so much of the categorizing for you and the cleanup for you. So definitely a lot of benefits.
Is that something I would apply to? Is that something I would apply to, like, if I wanted to bring just all of my stuff, like my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, bring all of that into a rule or into a data source? Is that something that can happen? Does it have to be all the same social channel, like all Facebook, or can it be like just any of our properties?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I would do. I would add all of yours. So I'm just going to switch and show you what I mean by that. I'll switch to mine so you can see how I would set up this data source.
Okay, I asked because this may be a way that I can integrate with my interns, like if they want to raise things to my, if they wanted to do because they're working inside of my my workspace. So I don't know, I might find uses for that. I didn't realize you could add more than one social account to a data source.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that. It saves so much setup time for the rules and such. So I'm just going to call this Gallagher Travel Accounts. And I mentioned before about the real-time versus recent. So real-time would be that you wanted those actions to take place before the post ends up in the engage column. So having that new content on there automatically, where the recent would be based on any actions that you're taking in the engage column. So that's the big difference there.
Like using a macro.
Right. Yeah, so that would be, it would trigger, or even just applying like a label. So you could have a rule that, if I applied a heavy influencer author label on someone, that's going to trigger an email to someone to indicate that, that someone was just added. The scheduled one you want to
would be a recent one.
Yeah, so if you want the automation to take place, so it's like. Yeah,
I asked because that is an actual use case that I want to have happen, because I have interns that monitor our comments for spam that makes it through, say, F-bomb hiding rule, because sometimes people would say hateful stuff, that doesn't necessarily meet a particular criteria. And, we don't want people bullying each other and having flame wars in our comment section. So if I could have them apply hey, this is a threat label, or or this is a spam comment, like somebody posting that, hey, you can make $5,000 if you just click here. Maybe we don't want that, and I can have them add the spam label and maybe have a rule that's based on that spam label.
Yeah, you definitely could. So it could, depending on the action you want to take. You could also, I'm just thinking here. Yeah, no, that would be the way to do it, because you can hide it from the column with a macro, but you can't actually hide it on the network without Automate. So, yeah, that's a perfect use case.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I love these real use cases. And the historical one, you wouldn't use the scheduled one, but the historical one, we don't see a lot of customers use that one, but the historical one's helpful if you ever need to go back in time and apply some rules to some content that you had from maybe the last month, because when you set up the rules, it will only go forward. So to do the retroactive data and apply those those rules to that data, you would have to set up a historical data source. So it's a data source that essentially it would run once and then it would be done. So that's what that one is.
I tried that and I couldn't get it to work. Or maybe it did work and I just didn't realize it did.
Yeah, okay. That's the thing. You may not, yeah. But we
how far back can you allow it to go?
Good question. I didn't think that there was a limit, but I can definitely find out for you. But I'm not aware of a limit. There probably is one though.
It stopped, but if you say it runs once and stops anyway, then maybe it did work. I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. It will stop. Yeah, once it's done, and it will say that it's done, like in the list.
I don't know. Never mind.
Hopefully it did. If it didn't, we can take a look and see what happened. So the keyword topics and managed accounts, those are just ways to identify or different labels for topic profiles. So choosing your data source, you can choose whether it's from a topic profile, which is what we call these keyword topics, or managed accounts, which is your social accounts, just old terminology, or you can have both. So some clients will have both in one data source if they are responding to posts on Twitter from a topic profile. So I mentioned before about how you can technically engage with tweets even if they don't directly mention any of your accounts. So that's the use case where you would have both. You'd have all of your managed accounts listed and then also that one topic profile. So you can see we can add multiple accounts. You can have as many as you want. So usually setting up the account the first time, it can be a little bit painful if you have a lot of accounts like we do in Gallagher Travel, because you would need to select kind of one at a time. I'll select my topic profile here too. So say it was our brand one. And we'll also ask you the keyword group within the profile. And as you're adding the accounts, it will also add your different media types that the accounts cover. So for Twitter, we've selected some of those. But then for Facebook, it's going to add a bunch more. Instagram, LinkedIn. So you would just go through the process of adding them all and creating that data source. So once the data's in there, I'll show you what it looks like. I have an all accounts one running here. It won't run by default. I would recommend pulling that data in, and it's not going to hurt anything for you to test this out under your own account to pull in data, because all it's doing is pulling in the data. It's not applying any rules or anything like that. That's pretty much the extent of the testing you can do under your own account, and no one else would really know, because you're just pulling in the data into Automate. So make sure that you do press play after, so it does start to pull that data in. So clicking on this all accounts, you'll see all of our accounts are listed, all of the media types, and I just usually keep everything at the bottom to the default. So the spam one doesn't really matter. The frequency, you just keep it at 1 minute. And it's as easy as that to pull in the data. The hard part is actually setting up the rules. But any questions before we move on to the rules part? I'm going to check the window.
Yeah, I think we're good. Just a 18-minute mark. So we might want to leave 5 minutes at the end for Q&A as well. Outside of Automate, if anybody has questions that you could answer, things they're running into over the past month.
Absolutely.
Also, we didn't mention what are the new features.
So
probably because I'm taking up all of Tara's time.
Well, our last release was actually in June, so we haven't had a release. Like our next one's not until August. So I think I don't know if it was our last call or the call before that we talked about some of them, but I think we've covered a lot of them anyway. The only exception I think would be the Twitter persona dashboard, but if we have time, we can definitely cover that too.
Okay.
All right, so the rules, I recommend when you are thinking about the different use cases for rules to just go in and take a look at what the options are. You don't need to set them up. You can just save draft rules even. So adding a rule, you'll see that it will give you the option to pick whatever data source you'd like. And if you are setting up an alert, you won't actually go to the rules section until you set up the alerts themselves. So when you are setting up an alert, whether it's a threshold alert or an email notification, you will need to go to the tool section and set those up first. They're located in there. And so by setting those up, you would just indicate the email address that you'd like to send it to and what the content of the email should be. And then once you set those up in there, it will actually show that as an option under your alert actions here. So you can see there's a threshold alert one. So
in order to have a threshold alert, you will have to have a data source created and the threshold created in the tool section, and then you can add a rule that uses that alert.
Exactly. The rule is always the last step. So sometimes you'll have the in-between step of the tools because it's an alert, where all the other rules you wouldn't need to go in there. So the tools section, just to show you what it looks like, has a number of things in here that you can play around with. Classifiers and analyzers are actually going away. They're soon going to be redundant with the functionality that's been added, so you don't need to worry too much about those. But if you did want to set up that email notification, you would just go in here and you would just fill this information out. So deciding what that subject should be. If it's a threshold alert, so it's based on a volume increase, maybe on your own account or a topic profile, a lot of clients will set up a threshold alert based on crisis monitoring. So if it's a topic that doesn't usually have volume coming in, and then all of a sudden it does, you want people to be alerted. This one has a few more options in here because you can pick the time span that it's taking into consideration. Most clients will pick kind of 24 hours for the threshold to look at, the last 24 hours, and it's a rolling 24 hours. So it will continue to check that, and then it can check it as frequently as you'd like, so maybe every 5 minutes. And you can pick your threshold value to be a number, so that's the absolute option, or a percentage change. If you have a low volume in your profile or your social account, we definitely recommend doing the absolute. Otherwise, you may get a lot of alerts. And this is something that you need to kind of play around with. You may set it up at first and find that you're getting way too many alerts. So you can always go in here and change your frequency if you don't. A data source and set up the alerts. The alerts are the ones that you can set up under your own user and they won't affect anyone else. So just, it's up to you guys if you decide to take that on yourselves. Those are the only types of rules that you can create, though, that won't affect other people. So just make sure that you're sticking with the email notifications or the threshold alerts only if you're into Automate. So you can technically go in here and do this now, yes. So
I know you're just coming into these webinars. This is kind of a 2.0 aspect of the platform. So yeah, you could reach out to Dom if you have any questions, or myself, and we could just help guide you appropriately.
Yeah, it's a very overwhelming platform, and to be honest, in most cases, clients that have maybe 1,000 users, only a handful will end up learning Automate. So, if it's something that you decide that you're not interested in or would prefer to have someone else set it up for you, that's totally. If you're doing that categorization automatically, or so we have a few here around emergency. So if it hits one of these emergency rooms, or the spam one that Dom talked about, you can add a whole list of spam and junk kind of related keywords. Ads would be common, like jobs, things like that. You can add a long list. You can even use proximity in here. So similar to what you can do in the topic profile in Social Studio, you can, yeah, exactly. I'll show you one that I think has proximity, this emergency one. You just need to type it out. So it's not as sophisticated as the interface with those ones, but actually it might be this travel payment one. Oh no. So, and this one actually, it does have the nice feature of being able to add the wildcard, the asterisks on there. So if it does say any pays or paying, here we go. Here's the emergency one. So you can see need help. Just need to make sure to put it in quotes, and then there's the proximity of 4. So need and help would need to be within 4 keywords of each other, but they could be reversed. And hovering over this will give you lots of information too about that. And there's also that help and training portal link up here. So if you go to that, it will take you to the section about content libraries. So if you are setting up alerts or you need a content library for your rule, tools is where you'll go as a second step. So data sources first, pull in that data. Second one would be set up your tools. If you don't need any of these though, you can go straight to the rule. But I'll show you what the rules look like. So going in and adding the rule, you can set up the rule based on any criteria. So once you choose your data source, I'm just going to pick my all accounts one in there. And then based on the condition, there's a lot of conditions in here. You'll notice some are grayed out. So some aren't available for the data sources that are real time versus the data sources that are recent. So that's why some are grayed out, in case you're wondering that. But if we did want to set up a rule based on the content library, like the spam one, so we set up a list of spam words, we want to make sure to maybe hide those posts, or maybe it's the alert about the suicide prevention. So if someone mentions one of those suicide words and we want to send an email notification, then we can pick the content library contains a match, and then you can pick the content library that you set up. So depending on what it is, we'll just choose the law enforcement one, pretend that it's the suicide one, and then you can choose your action. So going in here and looking through all the different conditions that are available can spark ideas for where Automate may become really helpful. And then the actions. So if I'd like to apply that notification, email notification that I had set up, you can find that in the list. There are a lot of options here. There's our threshold alert. So if it was the alert, we would just pick it and choose whichever one you had set up. So once you set up the alert, it will show up in this list. So if you forget to go to the tool section first, you'll jump in here and then you'll realize, oh no, I didn't actually set it up. So you'll know that you need to go set it up. Send email, there it is the one I was looking for. And so any of the email notifications that you set up would show here. You can have multiple conditions, multiple actions, depending on what you're looking to do. Just take note that anytime you are adding a condition that you will have a drop down of options. So depending on what it is. All right, so stopping there, any questions? I know we're running short on time.
Sarah, this has been great information. You know, it's a workhorse, right? Because I think there could be a lot of this that's being done manually today, where this is going to automate it and just really increase the speed and the awareness of things that maybe get missed manually. So yeah, any questions? Somebody can come off mute if you have questions. I think there might have just been a question in chat. And close out with some
Looks like Adrienne has one.
Yeah, so we definitely have a handbook that I can send off. So it the help and training portal is extremely helpful because it does have pretty much every detail. Just going to jump in here and show you about Automate and including all the use cases, but we do have a document that we put together for the Social Studio Automate Accelerator that we were running, which is soon to be retired. So I could send that over, and it's very detailed about best practices and such. That was actually the deck that I was using a second ago. so I can send that over. No
Yeah, I would
problem.
like that too.
Yeah, for sure.
And Adrienne, I will be posting the link to this video once I get it uploaded on YouTube. I'll post it in the VA Social Slack, so you should be able to get it there. And I'm also going to be sending it out to the social media weekly call email list that I created. I don't know if you're on that one, but if not, then hop in Slack and you should see it there.
Okay, any other questions? We can always have follow-up sessions too. I know this is a lot to cover in one call. We usually would have really lengthy discussions about kind of the workflow, best practices, and things like that. So don't think that this has to be the be-all, end-all.
Let's close it out there. Thanks so much, Tara. As always, it's a wealth of knowledge about this platform. I appreciate you making the time available to us. Dom, thanks for your insights. Next month, maybe you could show us, some of the rules that you set up, right? Practical applications. So maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to go in and because I'll have hopefully have some interns, maybe first Thursday, maybe not. But in the near future, I'll have the ability to set up some rules that the interns can work with in coordination with our team and kind of give you hopefully a success story on how that worked out.
Great. I'd love some other success stories from the field too. It doesn't just have to be on the Social Hub. It can be on Publish, any aspects of Publish or the Engage or the Analyze, some things that you found through your listening profile. So I'll close it out there, guys, in the July webinar. Thanks so much for your time. And this will be sent out to the YouTube page that Dominic's created, the DME YouTube page for interns. You could access this video at that time. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.